North Carolina, 2014. The summer air felt thick, heavy with humidity, and the smell of fried food drifting from a nearby diner. Emily stood at the kitchen counter of her small home in Durham, her hands deep in soapy water as she washed the same dish for the 5th time. She wasn't really cleaning. She was trying to hold herself together. From the living room, she could hear her husband, Mark, laughing on the phone with someone. His voice carried the same sharp tone it always had when he spoke about her. "Man, you wouldn't believe how big she's gotten," he said, chuckling. 350 pounds. I swear she moves slower than my truck on a cold morning." Emily froze. She didn't cry anymore. She was past that. Instead, her heart just sank a little deeper into the quiet space she had learned to live in. For years, she had endured the looks, the comments, the jokes. Once, she used to fight back. Now she just survived. When Mark hung up, he came into the kitchen. "You should stop eating those biscuits," he said, opening the fridge. "They're not helping your health or our bank account." He smirked, grabbing a beer. "You know, if you took care of yourself, maybe I'd take you out once in a while. But look at you, Emily. Who's gonna want that?" Her voice trembled. "I thought you married me for who I am." Mark laughed. "Yeah, well, who you are isn't who I signed up for. You used to try. You used to care. Now you just exist." He walked out, leaving her standing there with soap on her hands and tears that wouldn't fall. Outside, the sound of cicadas filled the air. The house felt too quiet, too empty. That night, Emily sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her body had changed, yes, but so had her soul. She had given everything to that marriage, her time, her loyalty, her kindness. She worked 2 part-time jobs just to keep their bills paid, making sure there was always money on the table, while Mark spent his weekends drinking with his friends. Yet he still made her feel like a burden. Her best friend, Clara, had told her months before, "Girl, you gotta stop letting him take your light. You've got value, real value." But Emily didn't believe it. Not yet. That weekend, Mark's cruelty reached a new level. He invited friends over to watch the game. Emily cooked for hours. Barbecue chicken, mac and cheese, biscuits, the kind of meal that spoke of home. When she came out to serve it, Mark looked at her and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Careful, folks, don't get too close to the food, or she might eat it all before we do." Laughter erupted around the table. Emily felt her face burn. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor. But instead she stood there, silent, holding the tray of food as if it were the last piece of her dignity. Later that night, when everyone left, she found herself sitting alone on the porch. The moon hung low over the pines. The world was still. For the first time in a long while, she whispered to herself, "This can't be all there is. There's got to be more to life than this pain." In that moment, something deep inside her began to stir. Something small, fragile, but real. It was the faint spark of self-worth, buried beneath years of humiliation. She didn't know it yet, but that whisper would become the voice that changed everything. She would learn that prosperity wasn't just about money or material wealth. It was about health, strength, and the values that make a person rich in spirit. And soon, Emily would find out what it meant to rebuild from nothing, to turn pain into power, and shame into a story worth telling. That night, she went to bed with a new kind of silence. Not the silence of fear, but the quiet before a storm. The morning after that quiet storm inside her, Emily woke up early, before the sun had fully risen over the pines of Durham. The house was still, filled with that thick silence that only exists when love has died. She sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, the mug warm against her hands. The air smelled of wet grass and distant rain. Mark came out later, buttoning his shirt, his car keys jingling. "You're up early," he said, not looking at her. "I couldn't sleep," Emily replied softly. He shrugged. "Maybe you should try sleeping less and moving more. Could help with your health, don't you think?" She didn't answer. After all these years, she had learned there was no winning with Mark. His words had lost their sting, but the weight of them still sat heavy in her chest. By the end of that week, he told her he wanted a divorce. It was a Saturday afternoon, hot enough that the air conditioning couldn't keep up. He stood in the doorway with a duffel bag, calm as if he were going on vacation. "I'm done, Emily," he said. "I can't keep living like this. I need someone who makes me feel alive again, someone who cares about herself." Emily blinked, her throat dry. "You mean someone who isn't fat?" He looked away. "Don't make this about that. You stopped trying. You lost your spark." She laughed, but it came out broken. "You killed it, Mark." He sighed, annoyed. "This isn't healthy for either of us. You can keep the house. I'll send some money for a few months until you figure things out." And with that, he left. The sound of his truck driving away felt like thunder rolling across her chest. She sank to the floor, her body shaking. All those years of loyalty, all the nights she stayed up waiting for him, the meals cooked, the prayers whispered, gone. For days, she didn't leave the house. She ignored phone calls, didn't eat much, didn't sleep. The fridge was nearly empty, the bills on the counter growing in a small pile. The word money had never scared her before, but now it did. Without Mark's paycheck, everything looked uncertain. On the third night, Clara came knocking. "Emily, open up! I know you're in there!" Emily finally opened the door. Her friend stepped in, eyes full of concern. "Girl, you look awful. When was the last time you ate something that wasn't coffee?" Emily tried to smile. "I'm fine." "No, you're not fine," Clara said. "You've spent years pouring yourself into a man who didn't value your worth. But you have something he'll never have: heart, kindness, and values that mean something." Emily looked down at her hands. "I don't even know who I am anymore." "Then it's time to find out," Clara said gently. "You need to take care of your health, your peace, your prosperity, not for him, for you." That night, Emily stood in front of the mirror again. Her reflection was tired, eyes red from crying, hair unbrushed. But this time she didn't turn away. She placed her hand over her chest and whispered, "You're still here, and you're still worthy." She remembered something her late mother used to say. "Real wealth isn't in your bank account, honey. It's in how you treat yourself and others." That memory hit her like sunlight breaking through clouds. She realized she had spent years investing in a man who never appreciated her, when all along she had ignored her own prosperity. The next morning, Emily opened her laptop and started looking for local gyms that welcomed beginners. She also searched for support groups for women on weight loss journeys. Her heart pounded as she filled out a free consultation form. It was a small step, but it felt monumental, like taking her first breath after being underwater for too long. Outside, the day began to brighten. She didn't know where the road ahead would lead, but for the first time in years, she felt a spark of hope, a quiet promise to herself. She whispered, "I'm not doing this to get him back. I'm doing this to get myself back." And with that single thought, Emily's journey toward her true self had begun, a journey that would test her limits, change her body, and rebuild her soul from the ashes of heartbreak. The storm had passed, but the wind was shifting. Something new was coming, and this time, it was hers to claim. It was early on a Monday morning when Emily pulled into the parking lot of a small fitness center on Main Street in Durham. The sky was still gray, the kind of dull color that made everything feel heavy. She sat in her car for almost 10 minutes, her hands gripping the steering wheel, heart pounding like she was about to face a crowd instead of a treadmill. Inside, the gym smelled like metal, sweat, and determination. A young woman at the front desk smiled at her. "Hey there, first time here?" Emily nodded, her voice soft. "Yeah, I guess it's about time I start doing something for myself." "Good for you," the girl said warmly. "Name's Brianna. We've got a free consultation this morning with Coach Ryan if you want to check it out." Emily hesitated. She hadn't been in a gym since high school. Back then, she was the girl who pretended to have cramps just to avoid running laps. But something in Brianna's tone, kind, not judgmental, made her step forward. Coach Ryan appeared a moment later. Tall, lean, with the sort of calm energy that made people feel safe. "You must be Emily," he said, shaking her hand. "Welcome. Let's take this one day at a time, okay?" She nodded, her throat tight. "I don't know where to start." "That's fine," he said. "Most people don't. We'll focus on your health first, not just the scale. Strength, movement, breathing, everything else will come with time." He led her through a few stretches, simple ones, but even then she could feel the strain in her muscles. Sweat rolled down her face, and shame crept up like a shadow. She thought of Mark, and how he used to laugh when she'd breathe heavy just walking up the stairs. At one point, she stopped and whispered, "I can't do this." Ryan crouched down next to her. "Hey, listen to me. You can. You've already done the hardest part. You showed up. Every step from now on is a step toward prosperity, health, and your own kind of wealth. You're investing in yourself, and that's the best money anyone could spend." His words hit her like sunlight through clouds. She wiped her tears, nodded, and got back up. That day, she didn't last long, barely 30 minutes, but it was 30 minutes of courage. When she drove home, she rolled the windows down and let the wind hit her face. For the first time in years, she felt alive. Over the next few weeks, Emily built small routines. She walked around the neighborhood every morning, waving to the mailman and stopping by the farmer's market for fresh vegetables. Clara joined her sometimes, always cheering her on. One evening, they sat on the porch together, the air buzzing with summer insects. Clara smiled at her. "You've got that glow again, Em. You look good." Emily laughed. "I still weigh over 300 pounds, Clara." "So what?" Clara replied. "You're glowing from the inside. That's real wealth. That's what prosperity looks like." Emily looked out toward the horizon, the sun setting over the trees. "I guess I'm starting to understand that. For so long, I measured my worth by what Mark thought of me. But now, I'm learning to see my own values." Clara nodded. "That's what living really means. It's not about size, it's about soul." That night, Emily took a notebook and began writing her goals, not about pounds, but about how she wanted to feel. Stronger, calmer, more at peace. She wrote, "I want to love myself the way I used to love others." The next morning, she woke before dawn and went for a walk. The air was cool, the streets empty. Each step felt like a quiet victory. Weeks turned into months. The scale slowly changed. But what mattered more was how she carried herself. People at the gym started noticing her determination. Brianna cheered her on each time she came in. Even Ryan, usually calm and professional, smiled with pride when she broke through another milestone. "See?" he said one day. "You're not just losing weight, you're gaining power." She smiled back, breathless but happy. "Feels good to finally invest in something that grows in value." "Exactly," he said. "Your health, your confidence, those are the real riches." That night she stood in front of her mirror again. Her body was still large, but her eyes looked different. Alive, bright, unafraid. She ran her hands down her sides and whispered, "You're doing it, Emily. You're really doing it." And somewhere deep inside, she knew that she was no longer chasing the ghost of the woman Mark had broken. She was becoming someone entirely new. Someone who would never again confuse love with approval. Someone whose worth couldn't be measured in pounds, or in anyone else's eyes. By the time autumn rolled around in North Carolina, Emily had already lost nearly 70 pounds. The air was cooler, the leaves turning golden, and for the first time in years, she felt lighter. Not just in her body, but in her spirit. She wasn't chasing approval anymore. She was chasing peace. Every morning she drove her old blue pickup truck down to the gym. The radio played country songs that spoke of heartbreak and hope, and she'd hum along, windows down, letting the wind carry away the pieces of her old life. One evening, after a long day at work, she stopped by the grocery store. She was standing in the produce aisle comparing prices when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Emily? That really you?" She turned around, and there he was, Mark, her ex-husband. He looked surprised, almost uncomfortable. His once fit frame had softened, his shirt clinging to a small belly. His confidence, the same arrogance that used to fill every room, now felt cracked. Emily froze for a moment, then smiled politely. "Hey, Mark." "Wow," he said, eyes wide. "You look different." "Healthier?" she said lightly, turning back to grab a bag of apples. "Yeah, I guess," he muttered. "Didn't think you'd actually, stick with that whole gym thing." Emily placed the apples in her basket. "Guess you were wrong about a lot of things." Mark shifted uncomfortably, trying to keep the conversation casual. "Well, I'm glad you're doing okay. You look good, Em. Real good." There was a time when those words would have made her heart skip. Now, they barely touched her. She saw through the empty flattery. "I'm doing more than okay," she said. "I've been focusing on my health, my peace, and my values. Turns out real prosperity has nothing to do with who's standing next to you, and everything to do with how you treat yourself." Mark forced a smile. "You sound different." "I am." They stood there for a moment, surrounded by the hum of grocery store chatter and soft music overhead. Then Mark asked, "You seeing anyone?" Emily laughed softly. "No, I'm just seeing myself these days, and for once, that's enough." When she walked away, she could feel his eyes on her, but she didn't look back. For years, he had made her feel small. Now she walked with her head high, her heart steady. That night, she called Clara and told her what happened. Clara nearly shouted through the phone. "You saw him? Girl, I wish I'd been there to see his face." Emily smiled. "He looked lost, Clara, like a man who traded gold for gravel." Clara laughed. "That's what happens when people don't value what's real. You were his real wealth, Em. You were the good in his life." Emily sighed softly. "Maybe. But now I'm learning that my value doesn't depend on who sees it. It's mine, and it's not for sale." As the weeks went on, Emily's transformation deepened. She lost more weight, over 100 pounds now. But more importantly, she gained confidence, peace, and a sense of purpose. People started noticing her energy. At the diner where she worked part-time, regular customers complimented her glow. One old man told her, "Darlin', you've got that light about you. Whatever you're doing, keep at it." She smiled. "Just working on my health, sir. Trying to build a little prosperity in my own way." Every compliment, every step, every drop of sweat had brought her closer to the woman she was always meant to be. And while she didn't know it yet, her story was about to reach the people who once looked down on her. Mark's friends began to talk. Pictures of Emily at local events started circulating online. "Man, did you see Mark's ex-wife? She looks incredible. one of them said. "She's lost like 150 pounds or something. She's glowing." When Mark heard the gossip, something inside him twisted. He tried to brush it off, but he couldn't stop thinking about her, how happy she looked, how much she had changed. A few nights later, he sat alone in his apartment, scrolling through social media. There she was, Emily, smiling at a charity event, standing next to Coach Ryan and Clara. She looked confident, radiant, prosperous in every way that truly mattered. He whispered to himself, "What have I done?" Emily, meanwhile, had no idea he was watching. She was too busy living, volunteering at the local community center, helping other women struggling with self-worth, and inspiring them to believe that their pain didn't define their value. She'd found her wealth not in money, but in purpose. Not in revenge, but in rediscovering herself. Still, destiny has a way of circling back. And soon enough, Mark would find himself face to face with the woman he once broke. Only this time, she'd be the one holding all the power. Winter came early that year in North Carolina. The first frost painted the lawns white, and the breath of morning carried that quiet chill only the South knows. Emily wrapped her scarf tighter as she left the gym, the early sun peeking through the trees. She'd just finished her morning run, 3 full miles without stopping. Her heart pounded, but it was a good kind of ache. The kind that reminded her she was alive, strong, and free. At the cafe across the street, Clara waved her over. "Look at you, girl," Clara said, grinning wide. 3 miles before breakfast? Who even are you now?" Emily laughed. Someone who's finally investing in her own health, I guess. They sat down with coffee, steam curling between them. Clara leaned in. "You know what you've become, right? You're like living proof that prosperity ain't about money. It's about spirit. You got that kind of wealth people can't buy." Emily smiled softly. "I used to think money was the only way to measure success, but the real riches are peace, values, and health. Took me 35 years to figure that out." Clara nodded, taking a sip of her coffee. "Well, you wear it well, honey." Their laughter filled the little cafe, and for a moment, everything felt right. But peace never stays untouched for long. Later that afternoon, as Emily was finishing a training session, she heard someone calling her name. "Emily! Hey, Emily!" She turned, and there he was again, Mark. Standing by the door in his wrinkled jacket, hands shoved deep in his pockets, looking older than she remembered. His eyes had lost that arrogant sparkle. "Mark," she said carefully, keeping her tone neutral. "What are you doing here?" He hesitated. I just wanted to talk." Ryan, who had been coaching her, noticed the tension and stepped closer. "Everything all right here, Emily?" "Yeah," she said quietly. "It's fine." Mark nodded awkwardly. "I'll wait outside." When she stepped out a few minutes later, the cold air hit her face like truth. Mark leaned against his car, looking nervous. "You look incredible," he said softly. "I almost didn't recognize you." Emily crossed her arms. "You said that last time." He gave a small laugh, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "I deserve that. Listen, I've made a lot of mistakes, Emily. I hurt you, and I see that now. I was stupid, selfish." She didn't say anything, just let him talk. "I lost everything after the divorce," he continued. "The house, my job, even some friends. Word got around about how I treated you. People look at me different now. I was hoping maybe you could help me fix my reputation. You know, just say we ended things on good terms." Emily stared at him, stunned. "You're serious?" "Yeah," he said, eyes pleading. "I'm trying to rebuild my life, Em. People respect you now. You've become, well, you're a symbol of strength, of prosperity. If you could just—" She cut him off, her voice firm but calm. You humiliated me, Mark, for years. You tore me down, laughed at me in front of people, made me feel worthless. And now you want me to protect your image?" He sighed, rubbing his face. "I just need a second chance. I can't find work. No one wants to hire me. I'm not asking for money or anything." Emily shook her head. "It's not about money, Mark. It's about values. And you lost yours a long time ago." He flinched. "You don't have to be cruel." "I'm not being cruel," she said quietly. "I'm being honest. You taught me how to hate myself, but you also taught me something else, how to rise. I built a new life from the ground up. My health, my peace, my wealth, all of it came from walking away from you." For a long moment, he didn't speak. The cold wind blew between them, carrying the sound of traffic and distant church bells. Finally, he said, "You've changed." "I had to," she replied. "You left me no choice." Mark nodded slowly, eyes full of regret. "I really did love you once, you know." "Maybe you did," she said softly. "But love without respect isn't love at all." He looked down, defeated. "So that's it?" "That's it." Emily turned and walked away, her boots crunching against the icy ground. She didn't look back this time. She didn't need to. When she reached her car, she sat there for a long moment, staring out the windshield. She wasn't angry, she wasn't sad. She just felt free. Later that evening, she called Clara again. "You'll never believe who showed up today," she said. Clara gasped. "Don't tell me. Mark?" "Yep, wanted me to save his reputation." Clara burst out laughing. "The nerve of that man!" Emily smiled, her voice calm and steady. "I told him no. I told him I finally found something worth protecting. My peace." Clara's voice softened. "Proud of you, Em. You've come so far." "I know," Emily whispered. "And I'm not done yet." That night, as snow began to fall outside her window, Emily looked at her reflection one last time before bed. The woman staring back wasn't broken anymore. She was whole. And deep down, she knew, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living in truth, in health, in prosperity, and never letting anyone take your worth again. By the time spring came back around in North Carolina, Emily had lost 150 pounds. The journey had taken over a year, filled with sweat, pain, and tears. But now she stood in front of her bathroom mirror, seeing a woman she hadn't known existed. Her face was slimmer, her skin glowed, and her eyes, those soft brown eyes, finally looked proud. The morning light filtered through the curtains as she tied her hair back, pulled on a fitted jacket, and smiled. It wasn't vanity. It was peace. Every scar, every stretch mark, every moment of doubt, it was all part of the story that had shaped her. Outside, the town was waking up. Birds sang from the trees, and the smell of fresh-cut grass drifted through the open window. Emily poured herself coffee, added just a little cream, and sat at the table scrolling through her phone. Notifications were piling up again. Her story had gone viral. Months earlier, she'd shared a simple post online. A before and after picture with a caption that read, "This isn't about weight. It's about reclaiming health, prosperity, and self-worth." She hadn't expected much, but people from all over the country had connected with her. Women sent messages saying her story gave them hope. Now, local news outlets wanted interviews. Fitness blogs were calling her a symbol of strength. Even the small community center in Durham where she volunteered had started a program inspired by her journey. Emily smiled at the screen. Not long ago, she had been invisible. Now she was being seen for the right reasons. Later that week, Clara convinced her to attend a charity event downtown, a fundraiser for women's health and education. "You've got to come," Clara said. "They're talking about featuring you as a guest speaker." Emily hesitated. "Me? Talk in front of people?" "Girl," Clara laughed. "You've already changed lives just by living yours. They need to hear your story." So that Friday night, Emily arrived at the event in a navy blue dress that fit her just right. The air was warm, filled with the sound of chatter, laughter, and live music. The venue was a restored brick hall with string lights hanging from the ceiling. Simple, elegant, real. When she stepped inside, people turned to look. Some whispered, others smiled. Emily felt her nerves fade as she remembered why she was there. Not to impress anyone, but to share something honest. Halfway through the evening, she was introduced on stage. The crowd clapped as she walked up, microphone in hand. She took a deep breath and began, her voice steady. "I used to think life was about making other people happy. I thought love meant shrinking yourself so someone else could shine. But when you lose yourself to please someone, that's not love. It's fear. I was scared to be seen, scared to fail, scared to believe that I deserved more. But healing taught me something powerful. Real wealth doesn't live in your bank account. It lives in your values, in your health, in your peace, and that's prosperity no one can take away." Applause filled the room. She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. After the speech, people lined up to thank her. Women hugged her, men shook her hand, and even strangers said she'd inspired them. Emily felt light, almost weightless, as if her soul had shed the last piece of sorrow it carried. But then, in the middle of the crowd, she saw him, Mark. Standing near the back, wearing a cheap suit and an expression that mixed shame and longing. He approached slowly. "Emily," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You were amazing up there." She looked at him for a moment, her heart steady. "Thank you, Mark." I didn't know you'd become such a big deal," he stammered. "People are talking about you everywhere. You've done something incredible." Emily nodded. "I didn't do it for attention. I did it for my health, for my peace." He swallowed hard. "I know. I messed up, Emily. I didn't see what I had when I had it. You were everything I said I wanted, and I was too blind to see your worth. I was stupid, chasing things that never mattered." She stayed quiet, letting him speak. "I lost my job," he continued. "I'm barely getting by now. Money's tight. I thought I had everything. Status, friends, power, but it was all empty without real values." Emily finally spoke. "You always thought prosperity came from wealth and control. But prosperity comes from gratitude, Mark, from how we treat others. You could have had all of this, a good life, real love, but you traded it for pride." He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "I know. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. You didn't deserve how I treated you." For a long moment, Emily looked at him. She didn't feel anger, just closure. "I forgave you a long time ago," she said softly, "but that doesn't mean I want you back." Mark looked down. "Yeah, I figured." She smiled kindly. "Take care of yourself, Mark. You can still find your own peace. Just start living by better values." With that, she turned and walked away, the crowd welcoming her back into their light. That night, as she drove home, she thought about everything, how far she had come, how deeply she had healed. The radio played a slow song, and the road stretched out ahead of her like a promise. She rolled the window down, letting the warm air rush in. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like she was running from something. She was running toward herself. And deep inside, she knew. Her story wasn't just about revenge. It was about redemption, prosperity, and the kind of wealth that can only come from loving yourself enough to start over. A year had passed since that night at the charity event. Life in North Carolina had settled into something warm and calm, the kind of rhythm Emily had always dreamed of but never believed she could have. Her morning started with coffee on the porch, her dog sleeping at her feet, and the sound of birds echoing through the oak trees that surrounded her small, peaceful home. She still worked at the community center, now as a full-time wellness coach, helping women who had once been where she was. Lost, tired, and forgotten. Every story she heard reminded her of her own pain, but it also reminded her how far she had come. One afternoon, as she guided a small group through their first workout, she saw the same fear in their eyes that she used to carry. When one woman, tears in her voice, said, "I don't think I can do this," Emily knelt beside her and smiled. "Yes, you can," she said softly. "It's not about losing pounds. It's about gaining yourself back, one breath at a time, one choice at a time." When the class ended, the women hugged her, thanking her for believing in them. That kind of gratitude filled her with something deeper than pride. It was purpose. She'd built a new kind of wealth, one made of trust, empathy, and peace. Later that evening, she stopped by a local diner with Clara. They sat at their usual booth near the window, sipping iced tea and sharing fries. "You've turned into a real hometown hero," Clara said, grinning. "People talk about you everywhere I go. They say you bring hope." Emily laughed. "I don't know about that. I just try to share what helped me." "That's exactly why they love you," Clara said. "You're real. You didn't chase money or fame. You found prosperity in something more honest." Emily looked out the window, watching the sunset dip below the rooftops. "You know what's funny? When I was married to Mark, I used to think prosperity meant having more. More money, more approval, more everything. But now I see it's the opposite. Real prosperity is about peace, values, and health. It's about what you give, not what you take." Clara nodded, her smile soft. "And honey, you've given a whole lot." The next day, Emily received an email invitation to speak at a women's empowerment conference in Raleigh. They wanted her to talk about transformation, resilience, and self-worth. It felt surreal. Just 2 years earlier, she couldn't even look in the mirror without crying. Now, people were paying to hear her story. On the day of the event, she stood backstage, her heart beating fast but steady. When her name was called, she walked onto the stage to applause that filled the hall. She paused for a moment, looking out at hundreds of faces, women of every age, every size, every story. "2 years ago," she began, "I was living in a house full of silence and shame. I believed every cruel word spoken to me. I thought my worth was measured in pounds and appearances. But what I've learned is this: your worth lives in your heart, not your mirror." The audience went quiet, hanging on every word. "I found prosperity not in money or wealth, but in the values I built along the way. Kindness, courage, forgiveness. And the truth is, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting what someone did to you. It means choosing to live free from their shadow." When she finished, the crowd stood, clapping, cheering. Some women cried openly. Emily smiled through tears of her own, humbled by the power of what she'd lived through. After the speech, a woman approached her with shaking hands. "I left my husband last year," she said. "He made me feel worthless. But listening to you today, I feel like I can breathe again." Emily hugged her tightly. "You can," she whispered. "Your story isn't over. It's just beginning." That night when she got home, she poured herself a glass of water, turned on soft music, and stood by the window. The air was cool and smelled like rain. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Mark. Just a short one this time. "I saw your speech online. You were amazing. I'm proud of you, truly." Emily read it slowly, then set the phone down without replying. There was no anger, no sadness, just peace. Because now her life was full, her heart was steady, and her silence spoke louder than any words ever could. She walked outside and sat on the porch, closing her eyes as the breeze brushed her face. The world was quiet, beautiful, and alive around her. And for the first time, she understood something simple but profound. Her revenge had never been about proving Mark wrong. It was about proving herself right. That's the kind of wealth no one can take from you. Summer returned to North Carolina like an old friend, warm and bright, filling the streets of Durham with that familiar southern rhythm. Porch swings creaking, kids chasing fireflies, and the hum of cicadas rising with the heat. Emily stood in front of her house, watering the little garden she had planted last spring. The smell of mint and jasmine filled the air. It had been 3 years since the divorce. 3 years since she'd hit rock bottom and decided to climb her way back up. Now, standing there in her worn jeans and loose white blouse, she looked nothing like the woman she once was. Her body was strong, her steps light, her heart calm. Her phone buzzed on the porch table. It was an email from a wellness brand offering her a partnership deal for a campaign about health and personal growth. She read it twice, smiling. There it was, proof that prosperity shows up when you stop chasing it and start living your truth. Later that day, she drove downtown to meet Clara for lunch at their favorite spot, a little soul food restaurant tucked between 2 brick buildings. As soon as she walked in, people greeted her by name. "Hey, Miss Emily, we saw your story on TV last week." "You're such an inspiration," she waved shyly, cheeks warm. "Thank y'all. I'm just doing my best." When she sat down, Clara was already there, grinning wide. "You're famous now, girl. Don't forget me when you start signing autographs." Emily laughed. "You're the reason I made it this far. I couldn't forget you if I tried." They ordered their usual, grilled chicken, collard greens, and cornbread. The waitress poured sweet tea and smiled. "You two always bring good energy when you come in here," she said. After the waitress left, Clara leaned closer. "So, have you heard from him again?" Emily sighed softly. "Mark? Not for months." Clara nodded. "Good. You don't need that mess back in your life." Emily smiled. "I don't hate him anymore. I think he was just lost. But I'm not responsible for someone else's choices. My peace costs too much to let him spend it." Clara raised her glass. "To peace, prosperity, and knowing your worth." Emily clinked her glass against hers. "To health, values, and real wealth, the kind no money can buy." They both laughed, and for a moment, life felt beautifully simple. Later that week, Emily attended another community event. She stood on stage, microphone in hand, sharing her story once more. This time she spoke not from pain, but from gratitude. "When I was at my lowest," she told the crowd, "I thought losing weight would fix everything. But what I really needed was to gain self-respect, to rebuild my values. I learned that true prosperity doesn't live in your bank account. It lives in how you treat yourself every day. I used to pray for revenge," she continued, her voice steady. "But what I got instead was redemption. And that's far more powerful. Because when you rise above what tried to break you, you don't just change your life, you change the lives of everyone watching." The audience stood, clapping, cheering, some crying. Emily looked out and saw women holding hands, smiling, nodding in silent understanding. She realized then that her pain had been transformed into something bigger than herself. A story of healing that belonged to anyone who needed it. After the event ended, as she packed her things, a man approached her. She turned, and for a second her breath caught. It was Mark. He looked older now, tired, carrying the weight of regret in his eyes. "Hey, Emily," he said quietly. "Hey, Mark. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to say, you were amazing up there. You've become someone I can only admire." Emily smiled kindly. "Thank you. I hope you're doing better." He hesitated. Trying to. I've been working steady, finally getting my life together. But I had to see you in person, to tell you I'm sorry again. You didn't deserve how I treated you. She nodded. I know, and I forgave you a long time ago. I had to, so I could move forward. He swallowed hard. You've built a beautiful life, Emily. I have, she said softly. But not because everything worked out. Because I worked on myself. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he smiled faintly, nodded, and walked away. Emily watched him go, feeling no anger, no sadness, just peace. That night she sat on her porch again, the stars glittering above her like tiny promises. She thought about her journey, the humiliation, the heartbreak, the hard nights when she almost gave up. Every tear, every setback had led her here. Her voice, barely above a whisper, filled the quiet air. I made it. The crickets answered back, steady and soft, as if the world itself was listening. And as the wind moved through the trees, Emily smiled, knowing that true revenge had never been about making someone else hurt. It was about proving, through strength and grace, that she was never broken to begin with. She leaned back, heart full, eyes closed, and whispered one last thought to herself. Words she now lived by every single day. Real wealth is peace. Real prosperity is health. Real power is knowing your worth. And you, have you ever lived something like this? Tell me your thoughts in the comments.